Midnight Mischief is a fast and spooky drafting game for 2 to 5 players, which typically takes about 30 to 45 minutes. It is the weekend of Halloween, and you are a goblin who is up to no good. During the 3 nights leading up to Halloween, you will assemble a collection of cards and ingredients. Each card has effects which can potentially increase or decrease your total mischief. And at the end of 3 nights, the player who made the most mischief is the winner. During this video, we'll go over the setup and rules of the game, as well as play through a quick example of Night 1.
Setup. Before starting the game, you will remove cards based on the number of players. I'm setting up a game for 4 players, so I will keep all of the cards that have a 2+, 3+, or 4+ minimum player symbol in the bottom right-hand corner of the card. The rest of the cards can get set aside and won't be used during this game. Then, shuffle each night deck separately and deal 7 cards to each player from the Night 1 deck. Place the ingredient tokens within reach of all of the players, and give each person a player mat. Lastly, give the person who most recently ate a piece of candy the first player card. Note that there are a couple of minor differences when playing a 2-player game that we will cover in another video. While not part of setup for games with 3 or more players, there will be 6 discard piles for suites and 3 discard piles for each other suit, those being activities, locations, monsters, and pranks. This is because there are twice as many suites as any other suit. Let's take a closer look at the anatomy of a card. Each card has a mischief value ranging from -10 to 22, a suit, between 0 and 4 ingredients, a name, 1 or more card effects, and a scrap bonus. A couple of things of note. Unless a card has a star next to its name, players may only have 1 copy of it in their score pile. Ingredients can impact card effects, but aren't actually worth anything by themselves. And then ingredients on cards and ingredient tokens function the same unless a card specifies otherwise. Let's go over some of the card effects and common terms you will see during a game. Now effects are triggered when you draft the card. Passive effects are triggered based on when you perform the action described in the card text, and these effects may be triggered multiple times. Treats are positive effects, which can potentially increase your total mischief, and tricks are negative effects, which can potentially decrease your total mischief. Both tricks and treats are only applied at the end of the game during scoring. In addition to these terms, you will also see these icons in the card effects and the scrap bonus section on cards. These icons are used to swap a previously drafted card with a card from the discard pile. Discard a card from your score pile, and then draft the top card from a discard pile matching a suit depicted in the swap icon. For example, this would allow me to swap one of my previously drafted cards for a location or a prank. This symbol allows you to draw a card from the current night deck. You can either scrap it for the indicated scrap bonus, or choose to draft it. If you draft it, you must then discard a card from your score pile. This allows you to exchange 1 ingredient token for another type. These are the 5 types of ingredients. If you scrap a card that has one of these symbols in the scrap bonus section, receive the corresponding ingredient token. Lastly, this symbol represents an ingredient token of your choice. Now that we are familiar with all of the terminology and icons, let's go over the turn sequence and play through an example of Night 1. Players will take 3 turns in Night 1 and Night 2, and 2 turns in Night 3, for a total of 8 turns in a game. Each turn can be broken into 4 phases: card selection, drafting, scrapping, and cleanup. During the card selection phase, all players will simultaneously choose 2 cards from their hand, one to draft and another to scrap, placing them face down in the corresponding spaces of their player mat. Once everyone has selected their cards, you can move to the drafting phase. Starting with the person holding the first player card, one at a time, each player reveals the card they chose to draft and places it in their score pile, triggering any applicable now and or passive card effects. Once all players have drafted their cards, you can move to the scrapping phase. Again, starting with the person holding the first player card, one at a time, each player reveals the card they chose to scrap and receives the indicated scrap bonus, leaving the card in the scrap/discard section of their player mat. Then, once all players have scrapped their cards, it's time for the cleanup phase. Once again, Starting with the person holding the first player card, one at a time, each player places the cards in their scrap/discard section of their player mat into a discard pile matching the suit of the card. If there is an empty discard pile in the matching suit, the player must place their card there. Players then pass their hand, including the first player card, to the player sitting to their left, and repeat this process. Since I just went first, I'll be going last for my second turn. Taking a look at the hand I was just passed, I'm planning on drafting the Grim Reaper and scrapping the Headless Horseman. When I scrap the Headless Horseman, the passive effect of the Grim Reaper is triggered, and I can gain a bat or a frog in addition to an ingredient of my choice from the scrap bonus on the Headless Horseman. In this case, I will take 2 bats. Players then carry out the cleanup phase, placing their scrapped or discarded cards in the corresponding discard piles and passing their hands to the player on their left. For my third turn, I'm planning on drafting Pumpkin Spice Delight and then scrapping Pumpkin Painting. When I draft Pumpkin Spice Delight, the now effect triggers and I choose to gain a fly. When I scrap Pumpkin Painting, I will place my Pumpkin Spice Delight in the scrap/discard section of my player mat and choose a location or a prank from the discard to draft. I'm going to draft Pumpkin Pie Face. During the cleanup phase, now that there are 3 activities, I choose a card to cover up. Note that since I used a swap scrap bonus, I have an additional card that I need to discard. There are 6 discard piles for sweets in games with 3 or more players, so I will place the Pumpkin Spice Delight here. On the last turn each night, players will have a leftover card, or 2 cards in night 3, in their hands. Once all players have completed their turn, set aside these cards as well as the current night's deck. Then, grab the following night's deck and deal players new hands. For night 2, deal 7 cards to each player, and for night 3, deal 6 cards to each player. At the end of night 3, the game ends, and whoever made the most mischief is declared the winner. Now that you have a good idea of how the game is played, let's go over final scoring. At the end of night 3, these are the cards and ingredients I've accumulated in my score pile. Jelly beans. Jelly beans treat is worth +8 if we have 3 or more bats, and +18 if we have 6 or more bats. Let's count how many bats we have. Remember that we are counting ingredients that appear both on cards as well as the physical tokens. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 4 tokens makes 10. So this card is worth +18 since we have 6 or more bats. That, with the mischief value of 10, gives us a total of 28. Skeleton. Skeleton has a mischief value of 15, and since we have a suite, the treat is worth +5, giving us a total of 20. Wolfman. Wolfman's treat allows him to count as an additional suit. We will choose Prank, so he counts as both a monster and a prank. His trick doesn't apply in this case because we have a location in our score pile. So in total, Wolfman is worth 14. Abandoned Asylum. For the Abandoned Asylum, we are looking for pairs of suits. We have 4 monsters, 2 pranks, including the Wolfman's treat, and 2 sweets. This gives us 4 pairs, which is worth +32. That, with the mischief value of 3, gives us a total of 35. Witch. The Witch gives us +3 for each bat. Since we have 10 bats, this is +30. Additionally, we get +4 for each prank, and we have 2 pranks, remembering to include the Wolfman's treat. So 4 times 2 is 8, giving us a total of 38. Pumpkin Pie Face. With Pumpkin Pie Face, we are looking for either 2 monsters or 2 cards that have the same name. Since we have 2 monsters, this treat is worth +20. That, with a mischief value of 9, gives us a total of 29. Pumpkin Pie. Pumpkin Pie also gives us +3 for each bat. Since we have 10 bats, this is +30. That, with a mischief value of 6, gives us a total of 36. Dracula. For Dracula, we get +8 for each pair of monster and bat. We have 4 monsters and 10 bats. This means we have 4 pairs. So 8 times 4 equals 32. Now that we have the totals for all our cards, we can add everything up. We have 28 from Jellybeans, 20 from Skeleton, 14 from Wolfman, 35 from the Abandoned Asylum, 38 from Witch, 29 from Pumpkin Pie Face, 36 from Pumpkin Pie, and 32 from Dracula, giving us a grand total of 232 Mischief.
With that, you are now ready to play your first game of Midnight Mischief. Thanks for watching.